In Israel, the sound of helicopter rotors carried more than the hum of machinery, but it carried the echo of relief. After 2 long years in captivity, the last 20 surviving Israeli hostages have returned home from Gaza. Their arrival at Sheba Medical Center in Ramat Gan, near Tel Aviv, marked the closing chapter of one of the most painful national ordeals in Israel's modern history. The return of these hostages, men and women held since the early days of the war, was part of the final stage of a ceasefire agreement brokered by US President Donald Trump. For the families waiting outside, it was a moment suspended between disbelief and gratitude. Helicopters descended one after another onto the hospital's helipad. Medical staff and soldiers rushed forward, forming a corridor of quiet respect as each freed hostage emerged. Among them was Yosef Ohana, who walked slowly but unaided, escorted toward a waiting bus that would take him for medical evaluation. Minutes later came Bar Cooperstein, smiling faintly as he waved from behind a window, a simple gesture that captured the emotion of an entire nation. Crowds gathered along the hospital gates, waving flags and holding up photographs of those still missing or lost. When the buses carrying the freed hostages drove past, the crowd erupted into cheers, singing and crying, their relief audible even over the thump of helicopter blades. The Israeli government confirmed that all remaining survivors had been brought home alive. Their release completes a process that began months earlier when the ceasefire deal was signed under the watchful eyes of negotiators in Doha, Cairo and Washington. The agreement, long thought impossible, was achieved after nearly 2 years of intermittent talks, secret exchanges and painstaking verification by mediators from Qatar and Egypt. Behind the scenes, US President Donald Trump personally oversaw the final stages, pressing both sides to deliver on the humanitarian component of his broader 20-point Gaza peace plan. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, speaking from Jerusalem, said the return of the final hostages was a day of homecoming, but also a day of reckoning. He thanked the United States and regional partners, adding that Israel would never forget those who did not return. The Sheba Medical Center, Israel's largest hospital, had been preparing for this day for weeks. Dozens of medical teams, psychologists and trauma specialists stood ready. Each freed hostage was taken first for immediate examination, then to private rooms for quiet reunions with family. The returnees, men and women, soldiers and civilians, were described by doctors as physically fragile but mentally resilient. Many had endured months in underground cells, moving from one location to another as the war shifted. In the courtyard, relatives waited behind barriers, clutching yellow ribbons and signs that read, "Welcome home." The Israeli flag flew at half-mast beside banners calling for continued peace. Sheba Hospital's director told reporters that the nation's heart beats here today, in relief, in grief, and in unity. He added that the process of recovery would be long, but the spirit of survival was stronger than ever. For the Israeli public, the images of returning hostages, frail but free, revived painful memories of the October War and its aftermath. The war had begun with a shock attack from Gaza that left hundreds dead and more than 250 people taken hostage. In the 2 years that followed, over 67,000 Palestinians were killed, 169,000 injured, and nearly 90% of Gaza's population displaced. Now, amid the fragile ceasefire, 500,000 Palestinians are beginning to return to what remains of their homes, while Israeli hostages finally reunite with their families. The moment at Sheba symbolized the shared cost of a conflict that scarred both sides. Outside the hospital, a small group of hostages' relatives lit candles in memory of those who never came back. One mother, her voice trembling, said, "We prayed for this day every night. We knew they would come home, but not all of them." For many Israelis, this day felt like both an ending and a beginning. The Gaza truce, though still fragile, has held longer than many dared hope. Negotiators in Sharm el-Sheikh continue to discuss reconstruction efforts, with a $70 billion fund pledged by the United States and partners to rebuild Gaza's hospitals, schools, and housing. In Tel Aviv, as helicopters continued to land, the scene was quiet yet electric, a kind of national exhale. Each rotor landing was met with subdued applause. Soldiers saluted, nurses held their breath. A television correspondent near the helipad described it simply, "These are not just helicopters. They are the sound of homecoming." The release also carries deep political significance. For President Trump, it marks a key achievement in his push to stabilize the Middle East and redefine America's diplomatic footprint. For Israel, it reinforces the message that no citizen would be abandoned, a pledge repeated countless times throughout the ordeal. Analysts note that the moment could reshape the political landscape within Israel itself. With national elections expected next spring, Netanyahu's handling of the hostage crisis, once a source of bitter criticism, may now bolster his standing. Yet many Israelis caution that celebration must not obscure accountability. Families of fallen soldiers continue to demand inquiries into the early intelligence failures that led to the initial hostage crisis. Meanwhile, in Gaza, Hamas officials have confirmed the completion of the exchange, but warned that true peace depends on the lifting of Israel's blockade and international recognition of Palestinian reconstruction rights. Their statement read, "We have honoured our commitments. Now the world must honour its promises to Gaza at Sheba." Night fell slowly over the helipad. The last helicopter touched down, its lights piercing the dusk. Inside the bus, one elderly hostage pressed his palm to the window, a silent gesture toward the crowd that had waited for hours. Applause broke out again, this time softer, more reflective. As the convoy rolled toward the hospital's main wing, a nurse whispered, "Welcome home. You've made it." The images spread instantly across Israel, families embracing, flags waving, tears streaming down faces. For a nation so often defined by resilience, it was a moment of unity that transcended politics and pain. At the same time, questions linger. What happens next for those freed? How will they rebuild their lives after years underground? And can the ceasefire, the product of intense US mediation and regional compromise, truly endure? For now, officials stress patience. The priority, they say, is healing, physical, emotional and national. In his evening address, Prime Minister Netanyahu promised full state support for all returnees, calling their recovery a sacred duty of the nation. He added, "We have brought them home, and we will bring back our strength." Nearby, a banner hung over the hospital fence read, "Thank you to the heroes who brought them back." Underneath, someone had written in marker, "And to those who never stopped believing." From the helipad to the hospital corridors, from tears of anguish to tears of relief, this day will be remembered not just as the end of captivity, but as the restoration of hope. And as the night deepened over Tel Aviv, the helicopters finally fell silent. For the first time in 2 years, families slept with their loved ones home. This was the sound of peace returning, fragile, imperfect, but real.